Morning. We're on day 2 of our oil painting workshop. I've got my canvas here, which is dried overnight, and I've done the burnt umber for the background. Almost dry would be more correct. I've also got here my reference image. So this is the image we're going to be painting. If you don't want to do the leaves, that's totally fine. We can make up a bit more of the side of the pear as we go along. I'm also not going to be worrying too much about the background. I'm going to be making quite a low value background and coming into light, a little bit like what we did with the ball. So we're just really going to be focusing on the pear at this point. Yeah, all right, so I'm going to set this in front of me so I can see it clearly. If you want to sketch using the grid, you can find the grid tutorial on my Instagram page. Also, I have not made up my glass palette yet because I was too tired last night. So hopefully today we will get around to it. You'll need your burnt umber paint and also your liquid for this. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to sketch my pear onto my canvas. So I prefer to have sort of the same amount of space on each side. I'm not a fan of having a pear or an image just off to the side. I like things to be nice and centered and tidy. So I'm going to try and center this as much as possible. So I'm just going to draw a sketch, a quick line, give myself an idea of where the middle might be. If you want to measure this out and draw a grid, you absolutely can do that. I'm pretty sure actually on my iPad I can find a grid to help me find the middle anyway. I've got Procreate, which is quite helpful for that. I'll just go photo. And on here has a drawing guide function. There we go, and it comes up with a grid. Where'd my grid go? Edit drawing guide. So I really just want a nice thick grid so I can see it. I really just want to find the middle. There we go. At this stage. I think that'll do. Done. Okay. So now I've sort of got my grid up here. I've found my middle point. So that's where I'm going to aim to put my pear on my canvas. Just take notice of the way that the pear tapers down on the bottom half of the pear. Pears come in all shapes and sizes, so if it's not perfect, it's not a worry. It doesn't have to be. But we do need a good outline of where we want the pear to be, because whatever we're going to draw on here, that's what the shape of our painting is going to look like. Now I'm going to add in these leaves. especially when it comes to portraits. It's really important to get the shapes right. If you're going to be creating something quite abstract, obviously you want to exaggerate some of the features or create a bit of a sense of play with the shapes, but you still need to be able to communicate the main facets of the shape of the face. So learning to draw and sketching is definitely part of it. I consider myself to be quite a terrible drawer. I don't draw very well. Definitely not my strong point, and is something I'm constantly having to work on. But like anything, if you do something every day, even just drawing on a napkin or a little piece of paper, one day you'll draw something and go, oh, that just works. And then from there, you can apply what you've learnt from the sketch that you like and go from there. Okay, so as you can see, my pear is very high up on the image and I'm not happy with the composition because I like to have even spaces between everything, and I've got a big gap at the bottom and we're bringing the leaves right up to the top. So in this instance, I really do want to create something at the front to even out the composition. So I'm going to put in this little rattan blankety thing here, but I'm not going to give it a lot of detail because I really want to focus just on the main part of the pear. And again, if you've got a projector, it's definitely a big plus because, to be honest, if you know you can draw and you have some drawing skills, there's really nothing wrong with projecting something if it means you save time and it's going to get you from A to B. Okay, and I'm not gonna bring these lines all the way up. I just want them to fade out because we're going to be doing quite a dark background, a very low value background. I actually think I might bring this pear just a little bit lower. Yeah, I'm a bit happier with that. Because then the pear's still the focal point, the pear is in the middle, but we've got lots of room on the outside to play with. Alright, I think I'm happy with that. So now what we want to do is we're going to do the underpainting. And it's really important with this part just to notice the value. We're really just focusing on the value. What's darker, what's lighter. And if you're struggling to make those observations and you find that you're not really able to identify them, maybe start with making the picture black and white. So I'm pretty sure here somewhere, oh, there we go. If we make this picture black and white, suddenly you're able to really identify the values. So if you weren't sure if the green was lighter or darker than the pear, then making it black and white will really help you see the values in your paintings. Obviously these leaves are quite a lot darker. They've got high value points, low value points. The pear really goes from light to dark from one side to the other, but I can also see that there's sort of a darker shadow on the side there. So these are all points we want to focus on when we're doing our underpainting. Alright, so all you need for this is burnt umber and your liquid. We want this to dry as quickly as possible because we'd like to get onto the actual painting tomorrow. So I'm just going to dip my brush in the liquid. And remember what we said about starting with the lowest value first. So I'm going to start around the side of the pear. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. So I'm just applying some of this low value burnt umber. It doesn't have to be burnt umber, but I find the burnt umber is a beautiful colour to have underneath. And later on I'll show you why it's nice to have an underpainting. Okay, as we get to lighter points, don't forget that our base coat that we put on is a mid-range. So I would say that this part of the pear in the middle there, I'd say that that's a mid-range colour, a mid-value colour. So I'm not going to bring my burnt umber all the way to the middle because I want to create a bit of depth, and I would just want to bring it up to that mid-value colour. So I'm going to need to start feathering it out. And a dry brush is good for that. I used a bit too much liquid, and that's why I have white areas on my paint, because I've used too much liquid and it's bringing up the paint underneath. So I'm just going to add a bit more paint to thicken up that liquid. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but bear in mind that the underpainting that we do is going to tell us exactly where we need to put our paint, our colours over the top. So it's a very, very vital part of your artwork. I used to feel like I couldn't understand why I'd have to... I'd try to do these underpaintings and I just felt like they were a waste of time because I didn't like spending so much time on something that wasn't the detail. But it's these early stages, these preparation points that really make all the difference in the outcome of your painting. Alright, I'm going to grab a dry brush. So I'm using a mixture of synthetic and horsehair for my brushes. Synthetic, obviously you get a much smoother look to your painting. Today, I feel that for the pear, I don't necessarily need a super smooth look. Some paintings, when it comes to portraits and things, I like to get quite fussy about them, or flowers. I like to have them looking very soft and warm. Not warm, but soft is still the right word. Whereas some paintings, I quite like the slightly scratchier look, the thicker paint. So it's really up to you how you want to do it. And that's what that piece of cardboard was really for yesterday, is just having a play with your oil paints and your brushes and see what you enjoy, see what you like, see what look you prefer. Now you can see as this burnt umber starts to come through the side, starting to get a little bit of shape, a little bit of depth. Notice the way that the light curves around the pear. Now I'm going to leave this pear with sharp lines to start with, and I'll come back to blend them out later. But for now, I just want to focus on just the pear, not around the pear. Apologies if my arm is in the way. I happen to be right-handed and put the camera on my right-hand side this morning. Okay, and then a bit of a lower value up here. And then we just want to blend that into the burnt umber that's already there. Alright, so that's my pear done for now. Actually, looking at it from this point of view, I actually can see some darker spots, and I just want to darken those up. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with how that's coming along. I'm going to move into the shadow on the bottom of the pear, because that's a very low value spot. Remember, we just want to touch on the low value points at this stage. And just like we did with the ball, just want to put a good shadow in there. It's super nerve-wracking for me. I pretty much never paint in front of anyone, and when I'm doing murals, I've got my headphones on, so if people are watching me paint, I wouldn't know. So, sorry if there's lots of ums and quiet moments. I'm not used to knowing I'm being watched, because if I make a mistake, I can quickly fix it without anyone noticing. Okay. So I'm just going to start pulling that shadow out a little bit. A little bit more liquid. This part of the shadow is not quite as dark as the rest of the shadow. I can see now that I've put some of my lines in the wrong place, so I'm just going to, for now, ignore those lines and just keep going with the shadow, because the shadow is providing something that I wasn't expecting it to in the beginning. It's just giving a little more substance to the lower half of the painting. So I'm just sort of moving my brush around, again rubbing in that shadow to create a bit of a feathering outlook. And I can see there's a shadow here as well from the leaf. So yes, underpaintings are quite important. Back in the sort of Renaissance days, maybe even later than that still, 1700s, when someone would learn from a master or be an apprentice, an art apprentice. I can't remember how many years it was, but I'm pretty sure they actually spent something like 7 years, 3 years, something, just doing underpaintings. And when the art master felt that the artist had correctly placed their values, then they'd allow them to start introducing colour. But they wouldn't let them use anything other than one colour paint to prove that they could accurately paint their values. So if people have been doing this for hundreds of years, it's obviously some value in it, you know. I feel like this shadow is a little darker, closer to the leaf than it is as it blends out. So I'm just going to put more paint there to get a higher value, a lower value, sorry. Okay. Now, time to start on the leaf. Again, I'm going to start with my lowest value first. And I think this leaf is quite dark, so I'm going to keep the paint thicker there. I've also just noticed that there's a portion on the pear that's also a bit lower in value. So I'm just going to keep adding a bit of paint. Not too much, just enough. And if you've noticed, I've been adding more paint to one side of my brush than the other, so I can basically roll the paint onto the canvas and then sweep it away. I like to gather my paint on one side and leave the other side free, which helps me blend. So one side of the paint is helping me apply it to the canvas, and the other side is helping me blend. The other thing that's good to know about painting is that there's that saying, an artist's work is never done. And it's true, because when you create something yourself and you start to get a bit of a knowledge of painting, you yourself can see all the things that are wrong with your artwork. And it's an art in itself to know when to stop, to know when to go, well, if I keep trying to work on this, it's actually going to get worse rather than it's going to get better. But sometimes you need to stick with something until you're happy with it too. So it's a fine line between making the decision where you're content with an artwork. You want to make sure that you've learned something from your artwork so that you're always progressing, that you can say to yourself, well, next time I'm not going to paint it that way. Or next time I want to try this. Or what I liked about my painting was that. And to have that skill to be able to analyse your work and still be content with it is in itself quite a challenge and an artwork in itself. Someone sent a quote to me once. I'm trying to think how it went. Something about like art, which is knowing where to draw the line, where to draw a line. A few good art quotes out there. If I can find it, I will post it for you. We're not going too detailed, but don't be afraid to chuck in little details, especially with the shadow and the values, because those are the bits we really want to focus on. We really want to make sure we get our values right, so that when we go to use colour, where we're going to be mixing value and colour at the same time, the decisions won't be so difficult. The decisions will be very easy because we already have our value scale down the canvas. Okay, so I'm going to turn the camera off soon, and I'm going to let you guys keep going with your underpaintings. Don't worry about how fast you are, that really doesn't matter. It really does not matter. Only matters when you're getting paid and you're on a time limit. That's the only time how long you take matters. Really, just wanna focus on your own shading and making sure that you're happy with where you're putting something. And the great thing about oils is because they take so long to dry, you can always grab a paper towel and you can wipe it away if you're not happy with something. Don't forget to either put this in a paper bag or straight in the bin, because once oil gets on something, it stays there wet for a very long time. One time I had a bit of black paint on my elbow and I didn't know, and I managed to get some on a blanket, on the wall, on my clothes, and no matter how quickly you can get it off, everything it's touched stays wet for a matter of days, and finds a way to transfer itself onto everything. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this mid-tone colour. I don't feel like I need to go into too much depth on this particular leaf because most of it is mid-tone. So it's really just blending it out. We're going to come back with some white soon, and we're going to go over the high value areas next. I'm going to keep these videos to half an hour because my phone can't keep up with it any more than that. If I make it an hour, I think my phone might actually die and I won't be able to post anything for you. So I'm going to keep them to half an hour, and that will give you a bit of time in between the hour, in between the two paint sessions. to work a little bit more on your painting until we're ready for the next stage. Just remember that you need a little bit of liquid, but the more liquid you use, it actually pulls up the undercoat. So be careful with that. And yeah, it's about noticing what's in front of you, thinking about where you want to place your paint before you put it on your canvas, and look at your canvas and look at your image, look at your canvas, look at your image, make a decision. And I can see that this twig here that's coming down into the pear is just to the left of the middle of this leaf, and just that's where I want to place my paintbrush. And I'm just going to move it across. You can see it's not a perfect line, it's a bit wobbly here and there, so I'll do a straight line for the sake of it being easier to start with, and then I'll add all these little nibs and bits of bark that are sticking out to give it a little bit of character. Okay, alright, so we'll leave it there for now. I'll let you guys continue on with your pear and your underpainting. If you decided to do a little bit of the rattan at the front, leave that for now and we'll come back to that later, but just work on your pear and the leaves and the shadows for now. Alright, we'll be back soon with the next stage of the video.